Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I'm Jon Macri, and I am joined, as always, by the great Nic Bodiford. Nick, Week 8 is trying real hard to be the one that breaks me between injuries, technical issues, among the usual, fantasy football frustration. So I'm in a mood this week. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, I'm out for vengeance against the universe and the fantasy gods. So ready to pick some winners here for Week 8. How are you doing?
I think it's pretty standard week 8. You settle into the rhythm, and let's do this thing.
Let's do it, man. We're gonna do our usual thing here. We're gonna talk some of our favorite quarterback and defensive special team streamers, wide receiver cornerback matchups, man zone data, O-line D-line matchup information, and then pick out some players from Nate's Start Sit article as well to highlight. You'll be able to get access to all of that stuff with a PFF Plus subscription. You can head over to pff.com and that will get you the access there. You'll also get access to live grades and snap counts during the games, as well as all the tools and rankings to help you guys dominate your fantasy leagues. So, Nick, we're going to get into it here with our QB streamers of the week, and you've got a rookie leading the way this week, but which one is it?
Yeah, Denver Broncos quarterback Bo Nix. Been looking at this one for a while. I think we might talk about him again next week, but for now, he's facing the Carolina Panthers, who it was already kind of a weak unit, sort of a top-heavy unit, but their stars continue to drop like flies, and particularly in the front seven. And Bo Nix, he's got this reputation as sort of a short area guy, and he does throw short a lot, but he also throws, he's sort of his decision-making is on a pendulum. It's either very short or very deep downfield. And this defense is dead last in the NFL in explosive pass plays allowed rate. Their run defense is also very, very bad. And Bo Nix has established himself as a really good scrambler. Overall, he's a good rusher, but his scrambling in particular is pretty dang good. So I think if you were desperate for not desperate, I think if you need a viable starter, I think that Bo Nix is a streaming QB1.
I like it, man. I'm with you in attacking this Carolina defense. Like you laid out, it's just not a good group. There's almost no pass rush there either. Denver's offensive line is really solid. They're fourth in pass blocking grade. Bo Nix has 2 top 12 finishes this season. Could potentially be in another one here, like you said. He's QB 13 on the year. That's pretty damn good for Bo Nix and considering the offense here for Denver. So I like the call. I think it makes a lot of sense. And how about your next QB streamer of the week, the return of Tua Tagovailoa?
Yeah, so Tua is taking on the Arizona Cardinals. We've got a small sample size on him this year, but when you look at his 2023 data and compare it to this season, a lot of it's pretty similar. There's a little bit of variation, but 5.8% big time throw rate, 3.4% turnover worthy play rate, adjusted completion rate 76.1. That's within 1.5% of last season. He's actually beating his yards per attempt by 0.3. Everything's pretty much in line. Like his time to throw last year 2.31, this year 2.33. So I think we just expect him. He's had so much time off. I'm not saying that I would be advising him to go out there or anything, but he's going to be out there and he's going to be healthy for as long as he's healthy. And we know that we assume that he's going to be a healthy start this week. So I think Tua just comes back. He does his typical efficient passing game thing. Looking at the Arizona pass defense, bottom 3 in success rate, EPA allowed per play, PFF coverage grade. This is a pretty soft matchup for Tua to return to.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, yeah, how Tua isn't going to be wearing a Guardian cap is beyond me. So he better stay healthy because we need him, right? Yeah.
I don't think so. Like I've seen some PTs talk about this, and the data on the Guardian cap doesn't seem to suggest that it's helpful one way or another. I think it was Sam Schwarzenstein who was saying something like they tested it with offensive linemen and that it helped kind of in the trenches on these minimal concussive forces, but like the big hit data when there is velocity It doesn't seem to like do anything. I think it's a half measure. I think it's frankly the NFL trying to cover their ass. But I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It-
It seems to be a little bit of I think it's I think it's BS, I guess. But I suppose he could be safe rather than sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of just how I look at it, right? Like, I mean, for a player that has been as fragile in these situations as Tua, like, wouldn't you want to just take every precaution, even if it, because even a minor bump could do it, right? So, yeah, it's not perfect, obviously, but yeah, we just need the guy to stay healthy, man. It's just killed Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's fantasy value as well. So, if Tua's back, hopefully that helps everybody around him. But I like those picks. And then I not necessarily a streamer, more just kind of I guess a vote of confidence for my pick here is Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going against the Atlanta Falcons. Baker, like, he's already the overall QB2 on the season, but I think there might be some hesitancy kind of in starting him without his top two wide receivers. But there's a significant advantage in the trenches this week for Baker that should give him, I think, plenty of time to operate and put his receiving options to good use here in week 2, or in week 8, whoever those receiving options might be, because on non-pressure dropbacks this season, Baker Mayfield has thrown 17 touchdown passes. That's 5 more than any quarterback in the league. He also has 8 big-time throws from a clean pocket. That's tied for the second most. And then those are independent of just his ability and not his receivers as well. So promising stuff there. He might not have like the top 5 upside without his top weapons in the lineup, but I think the right matchups should allow him and those kind of tertiary receiving core options that he has to still provide some startable fantasy value. And again, I mentioned the advantage in the trenches. The Buccaneers offensive line, they own a 76.6 pass blocking grade. That's the 7th best mark in the league. They've allowed a 19.6% pressure rate. That's the 4th best mark. Falcons defensive line has managed just a 55.4 pass rush grade. That ranks 31st, and their 30% pressure rate ranks 25th. So, like I said, huge advantage for Tampa Bay's offensive line here, which I think translates to Baker as well to, hopefully make the best use that he can out of some of these backup wide receivers at company.
Yeah, we'll get more into their pass
Yep.
catchers later on because the whole offense has to be re-examined now.
Yep. Yep, for sure. And then I did put a sit this week also kind of from the O-line, D-line matchup article, and it's Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks going against the Buffalo Bills. He's been a popular streaming option for us this season, but I think draws a difficult matchup here where he should see, I think, a lot of pressured dropbacks. The Seahawks offensive line ranks just 25th this season in pass blocking grade, and they've allowed the 3rd highest pressure rate of the season. Buffalo's defensive line has earned the 6th best pass rush grade and have generated a 24.6% quick pressure rate, which ranks 11th. And then when pressured this season, Geno is tied for the league lead in interceptions with 6. Pressured dropbacks have accounted for all of Geno's interceptions this season, and that includes 5 turnover-worthy plays, which is tied for the 4th most at the position. So, to me, disadvantage in the trenches, difficult matchup against the Bills, who also allow the 10th fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Just should, I think, create a lower output for Geno Smith this week, leaving him, kind of as a streaming option for better matchups going forward, but not necessarily this week. And then potentially without DK Metcalf as well. So, yeah, concerned about Geno this week.
Yeah, he's really difficult to fade just given the way that Seattle's throwing the ball, but this is probably like the season worst situation that he's been in thus far.
Yep. I'm with you. All right, before we go on to the wide receiver starts and sits here, I do want to give a shout out to our friends at DraftKings. It promises to be a month of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. It's the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the Sportsbook app and use code PFF. That's code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. All right, Nick, let's talk some wide receiver starts. And we're going to go to your wide receiver cornerback matchup article this week, where you got 3 starts, 3 sits. Let's start with the starts. Who do you like this week?
So Darnell Mooney against Tampa Bay Buccaneers undrafted free agent cornerback Tyrek Funderburk, which is the Funderburk's fun. I was trying to make the funnest name, but I got lost in the
Fair
sauce there.
It's an easy name to get lost in, yeah.
Yeah. So unsurprisingly, backup cornerback, not very good, especially a UDFA. I'm rooting for the guy because I would love to hear the announcers say this dude's name all damn day, but I don't expect that to be the case. Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense continues to experience injury issues. They've gotten healthy a little bit up in the front 7, and Antoine Winfield, he's back, but he's not doing a whole lot. So 2023 first team All-Pro, but this year he's at a 58.6 PFF coverage grade, his worst PFF coverage grade since his 2020 rookie season. He's been very unreliable. He's returning from a foot injury. That's the type of thing that's very difficult to work out with. I think I'm sure that Winfield will bounce back by the end of the season, but right now he's just kind of in a rough situation, which when you lose number 1 cornerback Jamel Dean to injured reserve, you are now in a very precarious place in your secondary. So Funderburk, we've got at least 65 coverage snaps on the perimeter for him to look at. He is allowed a 100% catch rate and a 71.4% open target rate. Among 79 NFL perimeter cornerbacks, that is dead last and second to dead last in the sample. Darnell Mooney, he's volatile naturally because of the downfield role, but in looking at his data, he more so profiles as a back end, like team level wide receiver 1 than he does a number 2. So among 65 perimeter wide receivers with at least 85 perimeter coverage snaps, Mooney ties for 30th in yards after the catch per reception, 12th in missed tackles forced, 7th in explosive pass plays, 22nd yards per out run, 21st target rate, 18th in deep target rate. You get it. He's hovering in this 18 to 30 range, basically, in most of the perimeter receiving statistics. So I think this is one where he's just going to kind of run right by Funderburk, and he'll, bring home a helpful, probably wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 2 outing here. But if he notches a couple long touchdowns, that would also help Baker Mayfield. We can maybe get into a little bit of a shootout.
Yeah, that'd be nice to see. And like you mentioned too, like Darnell Mooney, he'll spend over a third of his snaps in the slot as well, which could potentially help him because Tyke Smith, who's been Tampa Bay's rookie nickel corner, dealing with a concussion, might not play this week. So that would kind of clear things up a little bit as well in the slot, because Tyke Smith's been pretty solid, 70.1 coverage grade on the season. So there's just a little bit more opens up there for Darnell Mooney. And Mooney and Drake London have also both been really effective against zone coverage this season. Tampa Bay plays a top 5 zone rate, and they're about average in most team coverage metrics. So Drake London, I know, top 12 in fantasy points per route run against zone among wide receivers who have run at least 100 routes. And Darnell Mooney isn't too far behind him compared to 0.45. He's 0.37. So Mooney's been solid for sure. And yeah, I like the matchup, like you said.
Next one up here, Garrett Wilson versus that's New York Jets Garrett Wilson versus New England Patriots cornerback Marcus Jones. Here's how I'm looking at this one. The Pats have Christian Gonzalez shadow the opposition's number 1. We talked about that last week, and they even have him go into the slot to do that. Number 1 on this team is now Devontae Adams. So that at least implies Garrett Wilson is going to face number 2 perimeter cornerback Jonathan Jones and slot cornerback Marcus Jones, because he actually played on a. So if you look at just on the perimeter generally, he took more snaps on the perimeter. But if you're looking at each specific alignment, he took more snaps in the slot last week. So I like his odds here facing Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones. I think he's going to do more than keep up with the Joneses. Sorry.
Nice.
New England, they run a pretty high level of or high rate of man coverage. Garrett Wilson's very good against zone. He's also pretty good against man. But here's the thing: New England also blitzes a lot, and specifically they blitz a lot when using cover 0 or cover 1. Parsing the data down, there's a lot to digest here, so I'm going to leave it to the readers to kind of sift through all of this if they want to get the actual numbers. But the point here is that New England's coverage slips a little bit when they blitz. Garrett Wilson plays very well against cover 0 and cover 1 while the team is blitzing. So just looking at this sort of the new look Jets here, I think that this is a situation where Garrett Wilson can again deliver a usable fantasy outing, which has been a bit of a problem for him. I think that he is wide receiver 2 safe here. Do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is looking at Aaron Rodgers, I know he's dealing with like a bunch of injuries coming into this game. That would be the only concern, is if he stays healthy. But I mean, I don't mind, like, at least Tyrod Taylor is the backup and not Zach Wilson this time around. So like, if there's a case where, they're like Aaron Rodgers going to rest for one game, which I don't think is necessarily going to be the case, but that was basically the only concern I had. But yeah, I'm with you. I like the matchup.
So on that note, I did include the New York Jets pass offense against the New England Patriots pass funnel in the pass run funnel report, and basically broke down Aaron Rodgers against this defense. Again, saving the listeners' time here. I think that this offense can have a fantasy friendly outing against the cover 0, cover 1 blitz dynamic.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right, let's go to the next wide receiver that you had in the wide receiver cornerback matchup article. You got Keon Coleman of the Buffalo Bills going against a cornerback that not even I've heard of, Nehemiah Pritchett.
Nehemiah Pritchett, who it's like a fire and brimstone name.
Yeah.
So I know, dear listener, you were saying, but wait a second. Amari Cooper wasn't even on field for all 7 of Keon Coleman's targets last week. So how can you talk about the benefit that Amari Cooper has had on Keon Coleman? So that I say his snaps are going to go up. They didn't bring Amari Cooper in here to be a part-time player. He's going to be on the field more. The way that the Seahawks injuries have panned out is both of their starting perimeter cornerbacks, Tariq Woolen and Trey Brown, are dealing with ankle injuries. Neither one practiced last week. It does look like Tariq Woolen is going to return this week. And in that case, I expect Tariq Woolen, who bounces from side to side, they're not doing the Richard Sherman, you stick on one side thing with him. He's going to basically trail Amari Cooper when they're on the field together. And I do like it. I know, and it's just, I think JJ Zach Reason put something out there that was like, they were on the, anyway, they're going to be on the field together, which means that Keon Coleman, who is basically locked on the perimeter, is going to be going up against very likely Nehemiah Pritchett, who is he's our number 4 cornerback. He really is not very good, ranks 80th in targeted rate, 81st in yards allowed per coverage snap, and 82nd in explosive pass plays allowed rate among 85 perimeter cornerbacks with at least 60 perimeter coverage snaps. Keon Coleman, this kind of startled me. He's actually like performing fairly well. So he goose egged in week 2. And I thought about excluding that because he's a rookie and he gets better as the season goes on. But I included that 0 catch outing in the sample. Coleman ties for 13th in explosive pass plays, 4th in missed tackles forced, among 65 NFL perimeter wide receivers with at least 85 perimeter receiving snaps, and ranks 33rd in target rate, 11th in yards per out run, 5th in deep target rate, 3rd in yards per reception, and 2nd in yards after the catch per reception. He's averaging 10.3 yards after the catch per reception and 20.4 yards per reception. The final thing to note here is that Mike McDonald likes to run 3 safety sets. He's actually decreased a little bit this year from his time in Baltimore, but Seattle just lost Rayshon Jenkins, who I thought he was kind of a player to target entering the season, but he's been having a really good year. But not anymore because he's injured. I believe they placed him on injured reserve last Wednesday. So that basically their best coverage safety, at least in terms of performance. I do think that Julian Love is probably better than he is, but as for this year, Rayshon Jenkins, Seattle's number one safety, he's out. So I'm looking at this. Keon Coleman, he gets to go up against a backup cornerback with their best safety off the field. I think we can roll the dice as a wide receiver 3 here.
Nice. Love it. All right. So for me, I included Jawan Jennings of the San Francisco 49ers going against the Dallas Cowboys. 49ers, I mean, they're already going to be without Brandon Ayuk and potentially Deebo Samuel as well. So that already makes Jawan Jennings kind of, maybe an obvious pick here. But there's also the potential that Dallas could be without Micah Parsons again. He's currently questionable. I believe he did not practice on Wednesday. So that advantage in the trenches as well could potentially increase Jennings' potential this week, because on non-pressure dropbacks, Jawan Jennings leads the entire 49ers offense with a 28.9% target rate. He also leads the team in yards per route run by a pretty wide margin with 3.71 yards per route run on non-pressure dropbacks. And then also from the man zone wide receiver report, Dallas is playing a ton of zone coverage, giving up a lot of yardage there, ranking 29th in yards per reception, 26th in yards per target. While Jennings has earned the third best mark in fantasy points per route run versus zone at 0.64, leading the team in target rate versus zone, and ranking 13th among wide receivers in yards per route run versus zone. So I think he's a really good option in a favorable matchup here in week 8. And like with every team playing this week, it might be easy to also skip over Jennings as a potential fantasy starter. But given the matchup, and I think these kind of previous indicators, he should be in a really nice spot to produce in week 8. And, I mentioned again that the advantage in the trenches, just to highlight what that is: 49ers offensive line, 72.4 pass blocking grade. That's 13th. Dallas's defensive line has been about average to below average in terms of pressure rate, 34.9%, and quick pressure rate, 20%, ranking 16th and 25th respectively. So without Micah Parsons, potentially that becomes even worse. So really like Jawan Jennings in a matchup against Dallas on Sunday night.
So here's the thing that listeners need to know, though. He's dealing with a hip injury, and he did not practice yesterday. We don't know what his status is, but he did not play last week due to the issue. I'm concerned that he might not suit up this week. If he is active, here's the thing. If he's active, it's great, but they play on Sunday night.
Yeah.
So if he's a game time decision, you are in a really rough spot. And we're going to get to Ricky Pearsall here in a little bit, but if you have the space, the roster space, maybe what you try to do is have Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall in the lineup or on your bench. But like that's 2 bench spots. It's a really aggravating situation. If he practices in full one of these days, then like it's on. We're doing this. Sorry, now a lot of injury reports beginning to roll in now. If he practices in full, then it's on. You start him, zero concerns. If he's like DNP today and LP, he might not play.
Yeah.
They might have Deebo go out there too. I can't imagine that would be a good idea, but they might have him do it. I don't know. I want to be on board with this one. I could not bring myself to add Jawan Jennings in waivers just based on the hip issue, though, which it sucks because it's a great situation for him to be in.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I did have in my notes that he was questionable this week, and I guess was probably should have waited until the Thursday practice report here before, doing the deep dive, but we'll see what happens. I'm with you. We should know more today, right? Like if he doesn't practice today, then just forget it, right? It's not going to be worth it. We'll see what the practice report looks like when it comes out, which will be after this episode drops. But just a name to keep in mind, I guess, if he does practice and it seems like he's going to go. So other than that, we got a couple quick ones from the wide receiver man zone coverage report here. I'll start with the ones that are looking positive for this week. And the first one is Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. going against the Cleveland Browns, who are the NFL's man heaviest defense this season. They rank below average in yards per coverage target, yards allowed per coverage snap, and yards allowed per reception from man defense. Zay Flowers also banged up, dealing with an ankle injury. So he was obviously pretty quiet there in week 7. So he's another one that I think we got to keep an eye on. But if he's healthy, he leads the Ravens in target rate, 25%, and fantasy points per route run against man coverage this season. So would like to see him bounce back if he's able to go. Deontay Johnson, also of the Carolina Panthers, going against the Denver Broncos, another guy. We talked about him last week, but I'm pretty sure, it didn't work. Obviously didn't work out last week, but he's been by far, the top target in Carolina's offense. That is magnified when he's facing man coverage, where his target rate jumps to 36.5%. And his fantasy points per route run figure ranks 10th among qualifying wide receivers. So ideal matchup for him to bounce back. The Broncos do run man coverage at a very high rate, but rank 27th in defensive success rate and have allowed the 3rd highest completion rate while in man coverage as well. So, Deontay Johnson, I can't remember if what his practice status was this week, but he looks like he was okay. So there's always injuries on Wednesday to kind of keep an eye on. So Deontay Johnson. Then moving to the opposite side of the ball in that same game, Devon Vele of the Denver Broncos going against the Carolina Panthers. So last week it was Troy Franklin. This week, it's Devon Vele. So Troy Franklin has excelled against man coverage this season, but it's been Devon Vele who's Denver's most effective wide receiver against zone coverage. He actually leads the league in target rate against zone with a 23.3%, and he ranks in the top 25 wide receivers in fantasy points per route run against zone coverage. So could be like a viable deep league flex play this week, because the Panthers do run an above average rate of zone coverage, but are like 30th in yards per reception, 32nd in yards allowed per coverage snap. So Devon Vele becomes somewhat interesting. And then a couple of my favorite ones, as far as favorable matchups go, Ladd McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers going against the New Orleans Saints. McConkey owns an elite target rate against man coverage this season, 34.2%, ranks in the top 10 in fantasy points per route run and PFF receiving grade against man coverage. The Saints play man coverage at a top 10 rate. They've allowed the most yards per reception, the most yards per coverage snap, and the most yards per coverage target while in man. And they just lost their top corner, Paulson Adebo. And then one for tonight, Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings going against the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams play zone coverage at a top 10 rate this season, but they rank 24th in defensive success rate and are in the bottom 5 in yards allowed per reception, yards allowed per coverage snap, and yards allowed per coverage target, where Jordan Addison has had much more fantasy success against zone coverage than man. He owns a better target rate. He ranks in the top 25 in fantasy points per route run among wide receivers, compared to 92nd versus man coverage. So facing his own heavy team this week, like the chances for Jordan Addison to have a nice game here on Thursday Night Football.
All right, my quick hitting things. Zay Flowers, just to monitor, you mentioned he is banged up. It might be a high ankle sprain, so we have to just pay very close attention to the news. With Deontay Johnson, we get Bryce Young this week, which is like bottom could drop out there.
Yep.
They need to trade him. They need to friggin' trade him. But anyway, Devon Jacques Vallée, I love this one. I put Denver Broncos offense against both Carolina Panthers pass and run funnel defense in that piece. Mentioned their explosive pass plays allowed rate previously, but among NFL pass defenses, Carolina ranks 27th in catch rate allowed, 32nd in yards allowed per coverage snap. As to their run defense, Carolina ranks 30th in yards allowed before contact. I also think so all in with Devon Vallée. I think Troy Franklin, there might just be a changing of the guard going on here, where Cortland Sutton is just the sacrificial X, so to speak. So I still like Troy Franklin. They're really giving him opportunities. Mm-hmm. I think both of these guys are deep league viable. But as to the run defense thing, Javonte Williams, I think that he's going to do. I think he has a chance to finish as an RB1 again this week, which is very funny given the way that his rollout has been. All in on the Ladd McConkey thing. He's got a hip thing, but he plays through everything. So I'm not worried about that. And Jordan Addison, yep, I'm into it. Let's rock.
Nice. All right. So let's go on to some wide receiver sits now. And again, going to the wide receiver cornerback matchup article, Nick, who's the first guy that you wanted to highlight here?
Josh Downs versus Houston Texans slot defensive back, safety Jalen Petrie. So Downs, he's super good, but the issue here is just that Anthony Richardson continues to hunt for the big plays downfield. So among I don't know what the size of the quarterback sample is. I'll find it in here. But Richardson's top ranked, 51.5% pass to six throwing rate, 12.4 yard average depth of target, 3.0 second average time to throw. The guy's just running around. He wants the downfield passes. Unfortunately for Downs, only a 6.3% deep target rate and a 5.1 yard average depth of target. He's an excellent player, and I think that for that alone, he remains wide receiver 3 viable. But it's just right now with where these guys are in their careers, it's a very poor pairing. This coupled with the fact that he's going to have to go win against one of the better slot defensive backs in the NFL. Petrie ties for 10th in catch rate allowed, ranks 8th in yards allowed per coverage snap, 5th in targeted rate, and 2nd in forced incompletion rate. It's just a brutal situation. So I think if you have another option, I would go for it. This is no shade on Josh Downs. He's a very good player, but this is a classic matchup to avoid. Do you have anything you want to add on him?
No, I'm with you. I mean, it's been weird without Joe Flacco, with Anthony Richardson just not having that connection, obviously with Josh Downs. Like I think it'll get there later, maybe in the season or as the season goes on, kind of thing. But I'm with you. I don't think we can really trust them until we at least see it, right?
Yeah. All right. So next one up here, Arizona Cardinals ex wide receiver, EX and X wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. Facing Miami Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey. The scheme is not going great for Marvin Harrison, and he's earning targets, ranks 12th, 23.4% target rate, but basically everything else leaves a lot to be desired. Only a 36.4% catch rate, a 25% contested catch rate, 1.55 yards per out run, has not forced a missed tackle when lined up on the perimeter, only 3 yards after the catch per reception. It's a brutal matchup. Listeners don't need me to go in depth on how good Jalen Ramsey is, 7-time defending Pro Bowl cornerback. This is just not the matchup to target for Marvin Harrison Jr. Do you have a better option? You might not, but if you do, I would start them. Do you have any hope for Marvin Harrison here?
I mean, I guess the hope comes just basically when Miami is in man coverage, which it's only about a quarter of their snaps. It's not like a high rate; it's a little bit above average. But they're going for they're targeting Marvin Harrison against man coverage. Like as soon as they see one-on-one, he's getting a pretty high target rate, 32.6%. But yeah, like I'm with you. Like it just hasn't had the success that we've been kind of looking for outside of that. Really, that what was it, 3-game stretch, weeks 2 to 4, where he was actually really kind of useful. But it hasn't been good so far. So I hope he turns it around. But like you just laid out, might not happen this week.
Yeah. All right, final one here. Carolina Panthers rookie wide receiver Xavier Legette. So I already would not really love Legette, even if Andy Dalton were starting. But now we have Bryce Young, which really tanks his prospects. He's going up against Denver Broncos number 2 perimeter cornerback Riley Moss, who early in the season was a player that we targeted, but he's kind of turned things around. So beginning in week 3, he notched he's a rookie. He's 2023 third round pick, but he didn't really play a whole lot last year. In week 3, he notched his first forced incompletion, and then he went on a 3-game run after that, swatting passes. He has brought himself up to 34th in catch rate, 35th in yards allowed per coverage snap, 19th in explosive pass plays allowed rate, and 10th in open target rate. That's among basically 64 the starters. Okay, numbers 1 and 2 perimeter cornerbacks. Now I know those mid rankings don't instill fear, but keep in mind this is a number 2, and he's basically performing right at that bridge between the cornerback 1 and cornerback 2. So he's kind of turning things around here. Xavier Legette, 25th in catch rate, 50th in yards per out run, 57th in yards after the catch per reception, and 61st in yards per reception. Talked about him a lot of red flags in his profile. Now he has to go win against a player who I think is better than he is, and he has to catch passes from Bryce Young. The guy, he can outrun a car, so he might be able to get it done on any given play. But overall, this is a matchup to avoid.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. So for me, I put a couple of the wide receiver man zone players that stood out as poor matchups. And the first one is actually the entire Browns wide receiver core going against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, they play man coverage at a top 10 rate this season. They haven't been amazing from man coverage, but the Browns receiving options have been arguably worse, especially now that Amari Cooper's out of the picture. Like there might be, I think, some optimism with Jameis Winston starting, but all of the Browns wide receivers do rank outside the top 80 in fantasy points per route run versus man coverage this season. So I'm just kind of waiting on, on these guys to see what Jameis looks like, see what they look like with Jameis at the helm before kind of trusting anybody in that Cleveland receiving offense. The other piece is Jacoby Myers. Now, I don't remember if Jacoby Myers practiced on Wednesday or not. He looks like he did. So he looks like he's out of the injury protocol. So that's nice to see. But Jacoby Myers going against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are playing man coverage at a top 10 rate this season. They rank among the 10 best teams in yards allowed per coverage target and first down plus touchdown rate allowed from man coverage. And then all the Raiders wide receivers rank outside the top 50 in fantasy points per route run versus man coverage, including Jacoby Myers. So I don't trust this Raiders offense right now. I know we're going to talk about the Kansas City defense and special teams a little bit later, because I think it is kind of the perfect defense special team streamer to target this week against a poor offense. And then the last one for me is the Seahawks wide receivers. So I mentioned Geno Smith earlier against Buffalo. I don't like it. And I'm not crazy about Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett. Again, mentioned them last week. And they've performed just below average in generating fantasy points per route run against zone coverage, which the Bills have played at a top 10 rate this season. And they rank among the top 3 in yards allowed per target and yards allowed per reception from zone coverage. So just kind of tempering expectations for Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett in a tougher kind of zone heavy matchup this week. I think JSN probably the best of the bunch, but he's going to see a lot of Teron Johnson as well. So could be a difficult matchup this week.
Yeah, and Christian Benford is like the best number 2 cornerback in the NFL. So Tyler Lockett is not in a great place there, even if DK Metcalf suits up. I'm looking at this one for the injury piece I write over at NBC. Maybe the thing to note here is linebacker Terrell Bernard, linebacker Dorian Williams, and safety Taylor Rapp are all dealing with injuries. Now, they could all play, but they're all working through something here. Depending on how the week shakes out, the pivot might be not the wide receivers for Seattle, but the tight end. And I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to trade for Ken Walker, but I would expect the running backs to have a pretty good day here as well.
Nice. Like it. Okay, let's go on. But before we do, I do want to give a shout out to BetterHelp. Think of a time recently when you didn't feel like you could be your full self, like you were hiding behind a mask. October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to. At work, in social settings, around our family, therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask. Because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. Therapy can be really useful to get a better understanding of how your mind actually works and become more aware of your own patterns of behavior and how to improve them. It's useful for everybody, not just people struggling with something specific. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is a convenient, flexible, and entirely online way to get therapy that's right for you. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/PFF Fantasy to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PFF Fantasy. All right, let's go to the running back starts now. And I wanted to highlight Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers because he's posted now 3 straight games where he's finished outside of the top 24 running backs for the week, but I really think he'll be able to get back on track this week in a very favorable matchup. The 49ers offensive line has earned the second best run blocking grade on the season with an 81.3. They're generating 1.7 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's the third best mark. The Cowboys defensive line has managed just a 36.9 run defense grade this season. That ranks 30th, and they're allowing 1.7 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's tied for the 5th worst mark. So Jordan Mason, when he's been given at least 1 rushing yard before contact this season, he's averaging 8.1 yards per carry. That's the 9th best mark in the league among running backs with at least 25 attempts. Among those same qualifiers, Jordan Mason owns a 92.9 rushing grade that ranks 3rd best, and he's delivered more explosive plays, 18, than any running back in those situations. His first down touchdown rate, 38%, also ranks 13th among the same 43 qualifying running backs, which should get him back to being the top 12 running back that he's expected to be. Excuse me.
So one thing that we were talking about over in the pass run funnel report. I'm liking Javonte Williams a lot this week against the Carolina Panthers. As I mentioned, they're allowing 3rd most yards before contact, 1.9, and they stand out. You can go view the report. They stand out pretty starkly in the EPA allowed per play on defense chart. They're they're just basically one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So like I said, I think that Denver can kind of just bulldoze their way to success here. I think that Bo Nix is going to get it done on the ground. I think that Javonte Williams is going to get it done on the ground. He probably won't be efficient, but they should be able to move the ball, and I think he'll fall into the end zone once or twice here. You want to take it away, John?
Yeah, I'm alive. I lost my voice recording the IDP episode that didn't go out this week because the audio got destroyed, and not because of my voice. But I'm lost. I'm completely, my voice is dead. But Nate did include Javonte Williams in the start sit article this week. We talked about him last week from Nate's article. He had him as a sit. So Nate's turned around on him as well. Mentions that he's run the ball at least 13 times for at least 60 yards in 3 of their past 4 games. Averaging 63 to 67% of the offensive snaps. That's up from 50 to 50%, 57% of the snaps at the beginning of the season. Nice matchup in the strength of schedule tool, like you just laid out. Yeah, RB20 in PPR and half PPR for Nate this week in the rankings as well. So just hoping Javonte doesn't trick us again.
Yeah. We'll pivot over here to the running back starts and sits, and I can give us a little bit of an intro, and you can throw in some data here at the end if that's helpful. We'll give you a little break. You put in your time. For the RB sits, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, New York Giants versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. The thing that immediately stands out, Pittsburgh Steelers are allowing the fewest EPA per play on run plays, meaning they are effectively the best run defense in the NFL. Tyrone Tracy, as I recall, did lead this backfield last week, but he was not very good. And I think that with the way that Brian Daboll loves Devin Singletary, they're going to kind of shift back to him, as they call him, motor. 4-banger, 2.7 liter motor, but it's a motor nonetheless. So I get what you're saying here. There's probably going to be a difficult to predict split in the touches, and Tracy, you can bet on efficiency, and we did that a lot earlier this year. I did that a lot earlier this year with Chase Brown, and he ended up winning out. But when you lose the volume component, it becomes a lot trickier. I'm sure that Tyrone Tracy will be as efficient as he can on his touches, but it is always preferable to have both a full workload and efficiency on your side rather than just one or the other. Anything that I missed there you want to add?
No, I mean that's it. Basically, this one was from the O-line D-line matchup article as well, but I do mention that worried about the concern for split playing time this week. Don't really trust either guy. Giants offensive line ranking 25th in run blocking grade this season. The Steelers defensive line ranks second best run defense grade, 72.9. Um, And both of these running backs essentially have been bad when contacted 2 or fewer yards from the line of scrimmage. They rank 34th and 39th in yards per carry. Singletary having the slightly better mark there, but both haven't been good. Tracy ranks just 30th in rushing grade in those situations. Singletary ranks 59th. So, yeah, I'm avoiding the New York Giants running backs this week.
Yeah. You got it?
Yeah, I'll try. So
Okay.
yeah, the last running back sit here. This one from Nate's start sit article. It's Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and yeah, Tank Bigsby as a sit. Nate is a known lover of Tank Bigsby, so for him to include him as a sit definitely would have me worried. He mentions that the Jaguars run the ball only 32% of the time when they're playing from behind, which is below the league average. And that it's Dearness Johnson who's more likely to be on the field when they are losing, while Tank Bigsby is the main running back when they're winning. So Jaguars are 4.5-point underdogs going against the Green Bay Packers this week, and they were favorites in their past 3 games, right? So there's also the chance that Travis Etienne returns this week, as Nate points out, which kind of, again, further complicates matters. But Nate does believe that Tank Bigsby, someone to sit, even if Etienne misses another game. He has him outside of his top 30 running backs for week 8. All right, let's go to our waiver wire question marks next. Nick, you've got a number of names here to kind of go over. I'll let you kind of run through it here, and then I'll try to add in what I can. My voice is I can feel it starting to go again.
You're good. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost Mike Evans to a hamstring injury, expected to be sidelined multiple weeks. Chris Godwin dislocated his ankle and is done for the season. Bucky Irving, rookie out of Oregon, showed up on the injury report yesterday with a toe injury. He did not participate. Prior to the show, checked on his status, and it looks like, again, he's expected to be sidelined today. That's a bad sign. What we like in fantasy are two player backfields. When it gets up to 3, suddenly this is a huge problem, and there's just not enough touches to go around. So, what are the Bucs going to do with their offense now that they're down their numbers 1 and 2 wide receivers and number 2 running back? Jalen McMillan has flashed at times this season. They moved him out of his natural position in the slot to the perimeter, and he won that job outright. So I do think that it is possible that Jalen McMillan is in fact good. Although this extended look should prove definitively whether he is or not. We've gone into the Falcons defense a little bit here. The defensive line leaves a lot to be desired. As for the cornerback core, it would be really nice if the team allowed Jalen McMillan to kick inside part of the time, but the perimeter cornerbacks are not they're not difference makers. AJ Terrell, I think that he's a talented guy. His data is not that great. He profiles more as a number 2 than a number 1. But with that said, he does frequently shadow the opposing team's number 1. And so you can only expect so much from a guy who has to go up against the best player on the opposing team. We're going to learn if Jalen McMillan can handle him. I think that AJ Terrell in this regard is a really good measuring stick for where Jalen McMillan is at. If he could get inside and take a few reps against D. Alford, I think that we would like that a lot more. But as we've mentioned previously, this safety unit is perhaps the league's best. Justin Simmons is managing a hamstring injury, and so he could aggravate it in game and then miss, and then McMillan rips off a couple chunk gains. That'd be really nice. Not rooting against Justin Simmons. I love him. But what is it shaping up to be? Jalen McMillan, probably startable as a wide receiver 3, but you have to keep in mind, very, very big range of outcomes. Sterling Shepard, was a replacement level talent before rupturing his Achilles tendon. I don't think that helped him in any capacity. And I know that I saw in my leagues, a lot of people were spending a lot of fab on him. I am personally out on Sterling Shepard, although his veteran savvy could appeal to Baker Mayfield. So I get it if you were very weak at the position, adding him and stashing him. But I personally am not going to plan on starting Sterling Shepard as anything other than a zero floor, whatever ceiling wide receiver 5 type player. K. Dotton is someone who stands out against pressure. This is another thing that I was looking at for the NBC injury piece. K. Dotton does play very well when pressured. Now, we've already said Baker Mayfield probably not going to be pressured all that much, but on the plays where he is, the Mayfield's preferred targets when pressured are the top 4 are Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, K. Dotton, and Bucky Irving. So we're on the plays where the pass rush is getting after him. I do think that K. Dotton can have a successful day, and I think he'll be involved. I think that he can just be streamed as a tight end 1. We can have some conversations about where we might be ranking him. I personally will probably maybe cap it at tight end 10 or 11. I'm not expecting a ton, but volume is sort of king here at the position. So it is reasonable if you need a starter to fire him up. Lastly, addressing the backfield. If you roster Rachaad White, start him. If you need a running back start, I would go add Sean Tucker if he's available, and I think that you can comfortably start him. Both of these guys, well, I was going to say both of these guys can play as rushers and receivers. Rachaad White, historically not a great rusher, although Nathan Yonke, PFF's own, has helpfully pointed out on Twitter that believe Rachaad White has averaged 5.4 yards per carry over the last 3 weeks. So suddenly he's maybe this is the motivation he needed to figure some stuff out. I don't know. Yards per carry is kind of volatile, so I'm not going to put too much stock into it. But the point is, I think that he's going to get 14 plus touches in this one. Sean Tucker should be able to get 8 or more, and he has proven to be an explosive rusher and receiver. So as a recap, Jalen McMillan, viable wide receiver 3. Sean Tucker, viable running back starter. K. Dotton, back end tight end 1, though he could, I acknowledge that he could kind of beat that depending on the circumstances. Sterling Shepard, volatile wide receiver 5 for me. John, do you have anything you want to add here?
I mean, that was beautifully laid out. I am not going to try to add any more to that. That was that was perfect. So I'm with you. And you got a couple other interesting names here. We talked about the San Francisco receiving core, right? And potentially even Jawan Jennings missing this game now. Deebo Samuel with the pneumonia. Brandon Ayuk obviously is out. So we got a few other options that are kind of interesting here that you highlighted, Nick. Who you want to look at in San Francisco?
So, given all of the injuries, it is possible. So George Kittle, foot injury. It is possible that we get Eric Saubert back in fantasy relevance. I'm totally that's right. Okay, Dallas. So just checking on this live. This is great audio. So the Dallas Cowboys are allowing 9.0 yards per coverage snap to the tight end position. Last time when Kittle was out, Eric Saubert, I believe he caught 2 passes for 40 yards, and I think he scored a touchdown. I don't remember exactly, but that was against the Los Angeles Rams. He returned tight end 1 value. He's not a great player, but he is athletic, and he in this scheme, in the right matchup, I think he is tight end 1 viable. If we were, say, playing a defense like the Steelers, who are top 5 in yards allowed per coverage snap at the tight end position, I would be saying I don't think we should be considering Eric Saubert. But given the circumstances, I think Eric Saubert, if Jawan Jennings is out, he technically is the most accomplished pass catcher in the 49ers receiving core. So if you need him, if you want to get in on this game with Jawan Jennings out, I think that Eric Saubert is a capable starter. Even in a tight end premium league, he might be a flex option. But now my endorsement here is tepid, but I see how Eric Saubert is a tight end 1 in week 8. As for the receiving core, Ricky Pearsall terrible analytics profile, although he was very good when his quarterback was pressured in college. He was always the go-to guy. Very much beloved by the film analyst crowd. Shout out to Jetpack Galileo. We can't really know how healthy he is, given that he suffered a gunshot wound in his chest earlier in the year. And it's astonishing that this guy might be the most healthy member of the 49ers wide receiver core. Volatile, highly volatile wide receiver 4 is how I would characterize him. And that means that he could lead this team in targets. But you have to consider him highly volatile. That does not, like, he could lead the team in targets and he could not. And I mean thunderously. So Jacob Cowing is an interesting talent, but he's like 5'9", 160 or so. It's like a Tutu Atwell type frame. It's hard for that type of player to succeed. What I will tell you is, if you're thinking about attacking this game via DFS or deep league redraft, what you need to know is Micah Parsons could come back this week. Eric Kendricks could come back this week. I don't think Demarcus Lawrence, I'm thinking of Demarcus Ware. D-Law. There you go. I don't think he's eligible. I don't think he's returning this week. Deron Bland started the week as a DNP, I believe. Point is, what you need to be doing is checking the Thursday today and the Friday injury reports and seeing where Dallas's defensive stars are, because if these big name guys are out, it just can create a helpful systemic or a helpful fantasy scoring environment, which would make me feel better about Pearsall, better about Saubert. I'm kind of talking myself into Saubert as a tight end 1 starter here, which I guess we can compare. Cade Otton versus Eric Saubert. I think that Cade Otton is a better bet on the volume, but I think that Eric Saubert will be more efficient, and that's my official analysis there. Jacob Cowing, you could start him if you really, really need to in a deep league, but I think that the defense has to remain very injured for him to be viable. John, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, like you mentioned with Cowing, I think he's really interesting. Like, this is a guy that I think kind of fits this offense nicely. I know, like, he's a smaller wide receiver, right? But it gets a lot more usage around the line of scrimmage as kind of this low ADOT option, or at least he did in Arizona when he was there in college over the past couple of years. And he saw 59 screen targets since 2022. That was the 3rd most in this year's rookie class. Average depth of target of just 7.6. That was the 4th lowest in this year's rookie class. And you look at Kyle Shanahan's offense since 2017, the 49ers are tied for the lowest average depth of target in the NFL, which could play nicely into Cowing's skill set. Now, Brock Purdy does air the ball out. He himself is airing the ball out a little bit more than what I'm sure Kyle Shanahan's previous offense would allow for. But, like, I know if they don't have Deebo Samuel this week, this kind of feels like the type of player that could be kind of Deebo-esque in that role if Deebo misses time, or if the team trades Deebo, as has been rumored as well, right? Like, if they continue to lose games and, maybe feel like they can get something for Deebo as a pending free agent or whatever. I don't know. I just, Cowan, just kind of a name to keep in mind for me. Like you mentioned, DFS purposes or whatever. I'm not starting him in your standard fantasy leagues, but he is somebody that kind of, got on my radar a while back. But yeah, anyways.
Just imagining him getting airlifted by a linebacker on like a sweep,
yeah.
trying to do the deep role.
Yeah.
But he is a talented player.
Yeah.
And that should be the primary takeaway, not my joke there.
Yeah.
Cedric Tillman. Do you have anything to add?
No, go.
Okay. So Cedric Tillman facing the Baltimore Ravens. We kind of teased this a little bit earlier. Here's the thing. Do we know the starting quarterback?
Yeah, it's Jameis. Jameis is starting.
Oh, they said that.
Yeah.
Okay, so last I had seen, it was dependent upon Dorian Thompson-Robinson's finger injury, but he practiced in full yesterday, so I thought that maybe it was still a debate. Okay, so with Cedric Tillman in mind, Dynasty heads know who this guy is. He is the classical 6'3", 215-pound X receiver. Earns targets efficiently last week, 23.4% target rate. Total 11, caught 8 of them for 81 yards, good for a 1.72 yards per out run average. I think that Tillman might be able to get the job done here, but I would only be considering, again, he's going to be in the volatile wide receiver 3 category. Even with the volume, this guy was so completely unable to get on the field that he might be a trap. I have certainly cut him from dynasty squads, but like if he's out there and you need wide receiver help, which basically all of us do given the situation, I think that it's reasonable to add him and potentially start him. But you have to understand that when we are targeting projectable volume in the receiving game rather than targeting talent, that becomes a dicey bet he's not a great one to make. Now, I think he can do the job here because Baltimore really not very good on the back end. But it's just understand he comes with risk, even though you can start him as a wide receiver. And I did mean to mention with the 49ers thing and our DraftKings touchdown, TD Tutty, what have you, promo, Kyle Juszczyk kind of seems like they might try to manufacture something for him this week if everybody is out. I'm sure the sports books have already thought of that, but just something to consider. Do you have any thoughts you want to add on Cedric Tillman?
No, I mean, it was nice to see the snap share increase last week, obviously with Amari Cooper being out. We talked about him on the waiver wire show. I don't know how much, again, like I don't love what the Browns wide receivers have shown just yet, but yeah, I like the info there for sure.
Okay. So last guy here that we okay, so I wasn't this is really aggravating. So Jordan Whittington, he's out this week against the Vikings tonight. But this guy has shown that he is a capable player, and it is really a bummer that so last week he was active, but he was only out there for 9 snaps. This week he was a DNP, limited participant, and then went back to being a non-participant in practice. To me, that suggests that he may have suffered a setback. I'm not seeing anything officially that indicates that he actually did suffer a setback. He has a shoulder injury. Sorry, I didn't tell the listeners that. But with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua potentially coming back, plus the trade rumors, he is suddenly like a guy who he pains me. I have him rostered in certain areas. 24% target rate. That's really good. 2.12 yards per out run. We're talking about a player who has established himself as a talented guy, but now that the McVay guys are back, and we see that performance doesn't necessarily matter. Like Kyron Williams is averaging under 4 yards a carry half the time, and he's still rolling that guy out there instead of getting Blake Corum more involved. So I don't know. I'm really just out here asking, what do you think of Jordan Whittington? Let's say they don't make any trades. They've got, I think, a bye week in week 9. I'm blanking on this here, but
No, they had their bye.
They just came off the bye.
Yeah. Like I mean, it's an offense that they'll allow for 3 wide receivers to be on the field at once, right? Like they run a ton of 11 personnel. So Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, say they come back here. There's a room for a 3rd wide receiver, whether, we like Demarcus Robinson coming into the year for that exact reason. But if Jordan Whittington were to take over that role and, like you've laid out, he's played well enough to kind of earn that spot. Demarcus Robinson hasn't really done much. So I like him as that kind of, deep stash. And then, yeah, if something happens with Cooper Kupp as far as trades go, then it opens up that spot again. So definitely kind of an intriguing like stash right now for me. I think that is a good way to kind of treat him. So like if you picked him up, in Dynasty or something like that off the waiver wire earlier in the year, you're not starting him obviously for a little bit here because of the injury, but I don't necessarily know that I drop him just yet, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, bringing things home here with the DST streamers of the week. This one's sort of a layup, and it was a little bit bizarre because the Kansas City Chiefs facing the Las Vegas Raiders. They were owned on 60% of rostered and 60% of ESPN or Yahoo leagues, but were available in more than 60% of ESPN leagues, and that could not be ignored. They're facing Gardner Minshew because Aiden O'Connell, who they really like kind of tried to send back out. I mean, he came back out of the locker room with like a splint and tape. And anyway, they know what they've got in Gardner and they don't like it. They also, everyone else seems to know what they've got in Antonio Pierce, who is a really great motivator and defensive coordinator. But man, this guy, just crazy decision. Going for a field goal when you're down 8 with, a minute and a half left. Game's kind of passed you by, bud. Anyway, Kansas City Chiefs defense versus Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs defense are a very, very, very good unit. 12th in success rate, 13th in EPA. Oh, this is the pass defense. 13th in EPA allowed per play, 13th in PFF coverage grade, and then inside the top 8 in completion rate allowed, explosive pass plays allowed rate, pass rush grade, and quarterback pressure rate. I think they're just going to take this team to task. Raiders offensive line is decent. It's pretty good, but they've got some injuries going on there. And I think that Kansas City can kind of just do as they please. Was a big bummer to see that Jalen Watson, perimeter quarterback, got hurt. He's on injured reserve. That guy is really good. And he's starting to show it or continuing to show it this year. As for the run game, I think Kansas City can basically just blank them. Las Vegas is the worst graded rushing attack among NFL teams. The Zamir White, we talked about this really early in the year, whenever for next year, people, when the hype around a player is their workouts, this is specifically a running back who's said to inherit, 250 touches or whatever. That's a red flag. What you want to hear is that the offense is good, that he is good, not, oh man, did you know that he I'm thinking of Peyton Hillis pulling a car, that kind of that's not it. If that is what media is latching onto, it's because there's nothing else to latch onto. So Zamir White, I'm sorry, man, but it's over. As for the other defense, sorry, Zamir. As for the other defense, Chicago Bears defense at Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels did not practice yesterday. I believe he did not practice today. He's got a ribs injury. But they're going to try. Adam Schefter had a weirdly worded tweet. They're going to try to practice him tomorrow. It looks like it's going to be Marcus Mariota. If it is Jaden Daniels, that does change the calculus a little bit here. But Chicago's defense is a very talented unit. They had some secondary injuries, number 2 cornerback and Jaquan Brisker. But they were on bye last week. They should be a lot healthier. Washington Commanders, they've got a few great players, and then a whole lot of kind of nothing outside of that. So I expect I did mention here, Jaden Daniels, 15 sacks, tied for 15th most, 3.0 second average time to throw, ranks 9th. Anyway, I think that the defense can still get the job done, even if Jaden Daniels is under center, but I think it's going to be Marcus Mariota, and that is a matchup to exploit.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it does feel like Mariota's most likely to start this week. And either way, Chicago's defense has been really good. They're top 5 in yards allowed per play this season. They're the 3rd best team in or defense in touchdown drive rate allowed. They've allowed the fewest missed tackles in the league. They have the 2nd best successful play rate allowed. They don't have a lot of name brand defenders out there, but they're getting the job done this season. And if it's Mariota at quarterback, then that's only better for Chicago. So, yeah, like the calls there. That is going to do it though for us today. Thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you all. Nick, big thank you to you as well for doing this with me again. Please remind everybody what you got going on at pff.com this week.
Yeah, Tuesday morning. QB defense streamers Wednesday morning, pass run funnel report Wednesday morning, wide receiver cornerback matchups to target. Was that Thursday? Yeah, I got it all mixed up there. But anyway, there's the order. You can go find my work there. I'm at Nic Bodiford NFL on Twitter X, and I do injury things and blurb over at Roto World NBC Sports Edge.com. What is the thing? Roto World. You know the drill.
Yeah,
You'll
man.
find me there.
There you go. So yeah, make sure to check out Nick's work. And then yeah, as for me, we got the wide receiver man zone coverage report that's out now on PFF.com. O-line D-line matchup article will be out on Friday morning. IDP rankings, IDP fantasy report, also out now. I'll be re-recording for the second time the IDP preview episode. So hopefully my voice holds out for that one on Friday morning, I'm assuming, is when I'm going to be able to record it. Maybe tonight. We'll see how things go. But yeah, you could check all that stuff out now. And then, of course, make sure to check out Nate's ranking, start sit article, and recap articles as well on pff.com. Good luck, everybody, in week 8. And until next time, peace out.